When you think of role players, does a guy that averages 24 points, 5 boards, and 3 assists while knocking down 46% of his shots from the field and 42% from deep come to mind? Well, honestly, it shouldn't, because numbers like this indicate you are at least an all-star level player, and in this case, we're talking about Paul George. For this Los Angeles Clippers team, they have been on a roll as of late, just really turning things around with their newfound success, and it's looking like this team is a major threat for the Western Conference. With many different weapons they can throw at opposing teams, it's really hard to scheme around them, as on any given night one of their key 3 stars can go off, and now your entire defensive scheme could blow up. If you ask me personally, I think it's 1A, 1B when it comes to Kawhi and PG scoring the ball, and what makes Paul George one of the best 1Bs in the league is how well he can flow within the offense to go get a bucket. With the attention Harden commands, it allows George to stay locked in and ready, so once the ball is swung his way, it's an easy spot-up drop. By not having the ball in his hands as much as he had to last year, it allows for George to pick his spots wisely on the court, and with every move well thought out, it's hard for the defense to ever get the upper hand on PG. When you bring over Harden, you get someone who's so effective off that pick and roll, so right here it makes Grayson Allen stop inside the paint to take away the easy layup for Zoo, but with a 42% shooter from deep, George is a reliable kick-out action after this seamless ball movement. It doesn't always have to be a spot-up 3 where George can thrive off ball, as with his athleticism and rather quickness for his height, when forwards his size or even taller try to guard him far out, well, this is when he can sneak through that back door and go inside with aggression. Since he's so much more difficult to guard when he has that live dribble, defenders will try to overplay to take away this handoff action, but wham! This is where they make the fatal mistake, and George is flying in for the and 1 after the contact. These backdoors can all out be lethal, but if it's not one of these backdoor reads, then the Clippers can run an action where George bursts towards the rim, while Harden has the perfect angle to zip it to him, so an and 1 step behind him, George gets the easy one inside. This movement off the ball is key for PG because not only does it loosen him up, but it raises his confidence as he's already seen some easy ones fall through the basket. If you've paid attention to a lot of games, it's like this Clippers team is in sync at all times, as if you watch closely on this play, you'll see Harden and George both burst into action at the same time, and now with them both en route to the basket, Harden can drop it right to PG in stride, and he converts the tough and 1. To be able to connect on plays like this, everyone has to be on the same page, so when running off this screen, if George would have continued running through, it would have made this find more difficult. But when he stops hard keeping Vanderbilt on his outside shoulder, it allows for Harden to fully gather the ball and for George to push off towards the basket to grab an easy one at the front of the rim. It can get pretty difficult to guard George in these situations, as his size, strength, and speed for his position plays a huge factor. The best thing about all of this though, is that this is literally just the introduction into George's game, because once he's locked in and in his zone, he truly becomes a force. Everyone already knows how smooth his handle and playstyle is, but at times I think it's majorly underrated. How many 6'8", 6'9" forwards do you see around the league breaking down defenders in different types of ways to then go get the exact look he wants to knock it down? If the defense decides to play up tight, well, George can size them up before yanking them with his behind the back, and to get even more separation, he throws in that step back to knock down this tough J from the outside. It honestly looks so simple when you see PG do it because it's a staple in his game, so before you know it, he's already rising up to sink the shot and you're just watching it go in. As we all know, he's shooting 42% from deep on 8 attempts per game, and from the mid-range, he's connected on 44% of his 145 shots. Now, is the mid-range as good as the 3-point shot? Nah, it drops off a little, but when you see the way George is creating looks for himself to pour in the buckets, you'll nod your head in approval. When you pair that speed with the smoothness, you get these crossover combos that shake the defense up, and even if it's for the slightest moment, PG can still confidently rise up for the J. Like really, I'm not playing. You can be right there in front of him, but with his ability to knock down tough shots, this is just another day on the court for him. You'll have the times where George shows he isn't perfect by losing the ball after this swift crossover on Booker, but like I said, his confidence is extremely high. And when you pair that height with that, although the shot clock is winding down, he stays focused all the way through, just elevating over the defense. This high level of shot making is only possible through endless amount of reps on a hardwood, and when you notice all the way George can get into his shot, you really start to realize just how deep his bag is. Most guys need a lot of time on the clock and multiple combos to get exactly where they want, but with PG, the way I would describe his game is limited edition. And by that I mean, it's a limited amount of time that it takes him to get to his spots, a limited amount of dribbles, but I guess one thing may be unlimited, and that's purely the amount of buckets he serves up the defense. With things being at its simplest form, when working out these post-ups, George doesn't need a single dribble to create the space needed to get this look over Bradley Beal. Hey, some might call it basic, but when you have that height advantage and smooth stroke, this is when these immediate shots out the post become lethal. Even if he does have to make his way to the spot on the floor out these actions, well, this is where the strength plays a role in him getting his shots. With defenders having to play straight up since George can score the ball in many ways, when they slide into position to stop this attack, PG can get into your body with that off arm while stepping back and pushing off at the same time, and it opens up this massive gap between him and the defense for a clean look at the rim. Some of you might believe that strength doesn't play a huge factor, but if you watch this play, George is able to hold off Reddish, which keeps this distance between them, so now he has all this space to receive the pass. With AD shifting down to the paint, PG knows attacking baseline side would not be smart, so he goes back towards the middle of the floor, and with no worry in the world, he drops in the shot over Reddish. It may not be a whole lot of flash that goes into this, but it definitely moves the needle. It just gives the defense another layer to his game that they have to look out for, which makes their task even more taxing. Once your body is worn out throughout the game and from all the contact, George can now make the defense look silly with his slick combos, and when he's in his zone like this, well, there really ain't no stopping him. This smooth crossover constantly shifts the defense, but when going downhill, PG can see the defense collapsing on him, so he uses that off arm to shield off MPJ while spinning back towards the middle of the floor, and it's a wide open butterball. I know we all like to categorize his game fully as smooth, but you have to watch his game very closely, as then you'll realize that it's within these quick sharp movements with the rock that make his time on the court much easier. When coming off this screen here, PG smoothly snatches back, but the stop on the down was so sharp that it keeps Hayward moving downhill, and it's poetry in motion. So do you kind of see what I mean? His game doesn't just consist of a smooth blueprint, but within that, if you analyze the way George is navigating on the floor, you're going to see these sharper movements that lead to him creating space needed. Yeah, I know, it's really difficult to keep PG out of his hot spots and throw him off his game. If we look at his shot chart here, you can see from just about anywhere on the court, Paul George can reign in the buckets, and when we look at his conversion rate within the restricted area, PG converts 67% of his 109 attempts. Honestly, I think his driving tends to get slept on due to how fluid and flashy his shots can look at times, but with that size and flow that George plays with, stopping him from getting his feet in the paint is rather difficult. Not only is the finishing an amazing skill set he has, it's elevated even more when he can use that elite defense to turn this play into a fast break, and when Williams tries to run through the ball, George just euros around him and slams it through on the break. Once he has all that space to operate, it helps George out greatly, as he can coast up the floor with those strides, and when you're a sitting duck, the euro looks so polished and opens up that warm-up lane. Remember what I said earlier, it looks smooth, but you can see on this push here that George abruptly crosses over to the left, which allows him to get the step on Dort. And with no real rim protection inside, it's an easy kiss off the glass. With that subtle creativity, it can keep the defense on their toes, as he can use many different weapons in his arsenal to slice them up, so when he euros around his defender directly into the deceleration, it creates this gap between him and the defender as they keep flying, and the soft touch on this push shot is money. It can all out get nasty when George starts tying in all these skills to slash inside, and once he starts tearing down your defense with the buckets in close, well, you might as well chalk it up, as he now has unlocked his power move and its ability to use that smooth and skilled handle to get him a bucket from anywhere and everywhere on the floor. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like before heading over to watch this James Harden scoring analysis. I thank you all for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.